Union to strengthen democracy, to promote
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. The first American pontiff, Pope Leo, has given Christmas sermon where he has highlighted the plight of Palestinians in Gaza, asking worshippers to think of families living in tents, exposed to rain and cold. He's also said a Palestinian state is essential to peace. An official at the SBU Security Service has said Ukrainian long-range drones hit oil product tanks in the Russian port of Temeryuk and a gas processing plant in Russia's Orenburg. According to local authorities, at least 5 people were killed and 35 others injured when a suspected suicide bomber detonated explosives inside a mosque during evening prayers in Maiduguri, capital of Nigeria's Borno state, while so far no group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Acting chairman of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Tarique Rahman, has arrived in Dhaka after nearly 17 years in exile. He has emerged as a leading contender for Prime Minister ahead of the February 12 elections, as he was cleared of corruption and other charges after ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted. The Tanzania Civil Aviation Authority said a helicopter crashed near Barafu camp on Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro, killing 5 people including a pilot, a doctor, a guide and 2 foreign tourists. The aircraft was on a medical rescue mission and went down at about 4,700 meters on Africa's highest peak. Saudi Arabia said it hopes Yemen's Southern Transitional Council will end an escalation after UAE-backed forces seized control of the southern provinces of Hadramaut and Mahara. Saudi Arabia said a joint Saudi Emirati military delegation arrived in Aden on December 12 to press for an urgent STC withdrawal amid Yemeni backlash over forced invasion of the Yemeni islands. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents shot a man during an operation in Maryland after the driver of a van allegedly rammed federal vehicles and drove towards officers, prompting agents to open fire yesterday as the local police now investigate the incident. Torrential rains unleashed widespread flash flooding and mud flows across Southern California. Fire Department spokesperson Christopher Prater said that in the east of Los Angeles, emergency crews spent much of the day answering dozens of rescue calls and pulling drivers to safety. All right, viewers, let's start with some news on India, US and China. Now, China has hit back at the US, accusing it of distorting its defense policy. The accusation comes after reports suggested China may seek to use a recent easing of tension with India to prevent stronger ties between US and India. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ling Jian stated that Beijing sees its relationship with India from a long-term strategic perspective. He added that the border dispute is strictly between China and India, rejecting any external interference. This follows a Pentagon report claiming China likely aims to stabilize ties with India while curbing the deepening US-India relations. And joining me in this discussion now is Ross Feingold, who's a political analyst, and he joins us from Taipei in Taiwan. Thank you very much, Mr. Feingold, for joining me in this discussion. What do you see, how do you see the statements now coming in from China, especially after the Pentagon published that report? Do you firstly think that Pentagon was right in its place to call out the relations between India, China and Pakistan as it has, or do you think it was merely just stating the facts?
I think the latter is more accurate. It's just stating the facts. India, it must be said, and the audience knows this, no matter what China or the United States say, India is going to conduct its foreign policy in a way that India sees best fits India's interests, no matter what China's spokesperson says, or no matter what a report from the United States government says. However, I do think that despite some of the tensions that occurred in 2025 between India and the United States and between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, that relationship will recover in the coming months and years. So ultimately, there will be cooperation between the United States and India on issues like defense, on issues like intelligence sharing. And of course, the United States, looking after its own interest, is going to discourage India from, for example, using Chinese technology in its communication networks, just the way the United States does with other countries around the world. So yes, of course, India is going to receive a message from the United States that says avoid China. And of course, China is going to complain about that, and China is going to insist that they just want to do business with India and have friendly relations. So in a way, not much is going to change, because this has kind of been the situation for years anyway, and it will continue to be this situation going forward.
Sure. And would you not say that India, while US points out that the relations between India and China, have a sentiment of mistrust, it is also the United States that's also helping Pakistan with, military supplies. And not just that, we all know how Trump's family has his crypto business in Pakistan. Not as if India can be concerned with China's growing proximity with Pakistan, which in fact has always been the case, the same applies to the US.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. As I said, there's been a number of things this year that have caused some tension in the relationship between India and the United States. And the Pakistan aspect is a significant part of that. The trade aspect is a significant part of that as well. Again, though, no matter what the United States does with Pakistan, whether that's weapons upgrades, trade, the investments of the Trump family, I would say whatever we could list between the U.S. and Pakistan, I'm going to remain an optimist and say in the coming months and years, there'll be far more actions that bring the United States and India closer than bring Pakistan and the United States closer. So I'm going to remain an optimist on that.
Sure. And as far as the India-Pakistan relation is concerned, how do you see Trump's opinion there, and how do you see the fact, beg your pardon, not Trump's, but the Pentagon report that has come out? How do you see the fact that US has called out China, for not just having this, even though there's apparently been a thaw as far as the border situation is concerned, they've pointed out how mistrust remains, and China closing its association with Pakistan irks India.
I think that from the perspective of the experts and the military officers in the Pentagon, in the United States military or the national security community, they know that their partner in this region is India. It's obviously not China, and they've learned from experience that it's not going to be Pakistan. Pakistan, with its instability, changes of government, with the ongoing relationship between certain government agencies and terrorist organizations. So I think, at least from the perspective of the planners at the Pentagon, they want to see a closer United States-India relationship, whether that's joint military exercises, intelligence sharing. Frankly, there is an aspect of the U.S. hopes that India procures weapons from the United States more than it does from other potential suppliers.
Yes. Finally, do you think the Pentagon report calling out relations between India and China could also stem from some sense of insecurity, because U.S. would not like China to exercise its dominance, not just on Pakistan, but in South Asia and Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific?
I wouldn't use the word insecurity. I would say that this is a consistent message from the United States. It's not always successful, though. So the United States could reflect this to countries in Southeast Asia, for example, Malaysia or Indonesia, which the United States considers important partners, but at the same time, those countries continue to grow their trade and political relationship with China. They even have military cooperation, like joint exercises, things like that. So it's part of U.S. policy, but we have to be realistic. Those countries, whether it's India or certain countries in Southeast Asia, they'll take on board some of what the U.S. says, but not all of it. And ultimately, they'll conduct their foreign policy in a way they see best fits their own interests.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us on that. But do continue to stay on as I seek your opinion going forward. Viewers, China's Commerce Ministry is calling for solutions that align with Chinese laws as TikTok's U.S. operations move toward a transfer of control. ByteDance, the app's Chinese owner, signed binding agreements last week to hand over TikTok's U.S. operations to a group of investors, including Oracle. This is a major step to avoid a U.S. ban and end years of uncertainty. A ministry spokesperson, He Yongqian, urged the U.S. to create a fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory business environment for Chinese companies. He also hopes for both countries to work together to ensure stable operations for Chinese enterprises in the U.S. All right, I now request Mr. Feingold to join us back in the discussion here. Mr. Feingold, you know, when China makes such statements, I can only see its hypocrisy. I'm sorry to spell that out as it is, but the fact is China does not allow any other companies' technologies, you know, to run within its own country. It has its own social media platforms, it has its own search engines. When China does not allow, you know, Google or WhatsApp to be used in China, why does it have a problem if other countries ban its apps, especially when they pose a security concern?
We see the same thing when it comes to a wide range of trade issues with China. So going back years ago, for example, U.S. or other countries would say, China, you're subsidizing your manufacturers, you're giving them land or cheap electricity, and it allows them to sell their products cheaply overseas. And China would say, oh, that's not fair, or we have unique circumstances, you do the same thing. So this kind of back and forth in the trade space traditionally has now made its way into the digital space as well. We also see the United States arguing with the European Union about regulation of the digital space or the online social media space as well. This is not going to change. So there's almost no likelihood that China is suddenly going to be flexible enough to allow WhatsApp or other social media platforms from outside China to operate in China. At the same time, China will continue to complain when countries take regulatory action against Chinese social media apps. For example, here in Taiwan, where I'm speaking from, the Chinese social media app Red Note, Xiaohongshu, was recently banned for 1 year because of concerns about scams that were occurring on the platform. So China will continue to face this negative reputation, and they'll complain when countries take action, but they're not going to open up their market.
Sure. And what do you think is really in it for China as far as the new deal is concerned?
Well, China, they want the world to use Chinese apps. You know, the Chinese companies make money from that, most notably ByteDance, with the huge success of TikTok around the world. But more importantly than simply just making money or a Chinese company making money, it's also a message to the world that China is able to produce things that are popular, that are at the cutting edge of technology or social media space. So it's great public relations for China as well, and it generates goodwill towards China. Everyone around the world knows that TikTok comes from China. And if you have people say, what's the big deal? I just use it to sell my products or to make videos of myself dancing. It generates goodwill towards China. So that's good for China's political or foreign relations goals.
Sure. Well, thank you for now, Mr. Feingold, for joining me in this discussion. And with that, viewers, we're going to proceed in our bulletin. There's news now coming in from Bangladesh. Tarique Rahman, heir to the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, returned to Bangladesh after 17 years in self-imposed exile. He was welcomed by huge crowds at Dhaka airport, where he paid homage to the soil and waved to supporters. Rahman, accompanied by his wife and daughter, will lead the BNP in the February 12 general election, the first since former Premier Sheikh Hasina stepped down following a student-led uprising last year. The party is seen as a frontrunner, and Rahman is expected to be nominated Prime Minister if they win a majority. His mother, former leader Khaleda Zia, remains in hospital in critical condition despite pledging to campaign for the elections. Rahman's return follows unrest over the killing of student leader Sharif Osman Hadi, which sparked protests, attacks on newspapers, and rising anti-India sentiment in the country. Rahman was acquitted of a life sentence in absentia for a 2004 grenade attack following Hasina's exit. He maintained a low profile in London but remained active on social media and met interim government head Mohammad Yunus earlier this year. Let's listen into what a BNP supporter has said.
মানে কি বলবো ভাষা বোঝার মতো না এত আনন্দ আজকে আমাদের মনে হয় যে আমরা একটা ঈদের আনন্দ মনে ভোগ করতেছি তা আল্লাহ তার দীর্ঘ ইয়া করুক যে আমরা দোয়া করি যে সেদিন সুস্থ থাকে এবং উনি পুরো বাংলাদেশে তার স্বপ্নের মতো একটা নতুন বাংলাদেশ গড়ে তুলুক এটা আমরা আশা করি
দীর্ঘ 17 বছর পর ওনাকে দেখার অনুভূতি আমি আপনাকে ভেঙে বলতে পারবো না আমি অনুভূতির আবেগে আপ্লুত হয়ে গেছি আমাদের এমপ্লয়িরা সাধারণ বিমান এমপ্লয়ি যারা আছে তারা আবেগ আপ্লুত আপনি দেখতে পাচ্ছেন সবাই হাতে প্লেকার্ড এবং ব্যানার ক্যাপ নিয়ে মাঠে নেমে গেছে।
All right, and joining me in this discussion is Ambassador Veena Sikri. She is the former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh and joins us from New Delhi. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining me in this discussion. Ambassador Sikri, do you think Rahman's return will have a significant impact on the voters in Bangladesh, especially given the fact that he's really been absent from Bangladesh's politics for all these years in self-exile?
Well, the return of Tarique Rahman has certainly added a lot of excitement because, as you correctly said, he has returned after 17 years. And he's returned at a very crucial time because it's just 6 weeks or so before the scheduled election. But also it's a very tense time because we've seen a lot of political difficulties. It was the murder of one of the candidates, very high-profile murder. Osman Hadi, head of the Inqilab Manch, was shot while he was traveling in Dhaka on an auto rickshaw. And we've also seen that, the Awami League, led by former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, the activities of the Awami League have been banned, and Awami League is not being allowed to take part in the election. This also has led to its own uncertainty because the events of the last 15 months have shown that the Awami League vote bank is really intact. And above all, there is the presence of the Jamaat-e-Islami as the de facto power behind Mohammad Yunus. And they now seem to be more interested in bringing together a coalition of Islamist parties, the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Islami Andolan Bangladesh, the National Citizens Party, which is not really a students' party, but it has members of the Islami Chhatra Shibir, the student wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami. So, the Islamist group seems to be very interested in getting to power. So in that sense, there's a clash between the BNP, which used to be an erstwhile alliance partner of the Jamaat-e-Islami, when Begum Khaleda Zia, the head of the BNP, was Prime Minister from 2001 to 2006. The Jamaat-e-Islami was a member of her ruling alliance. But now it's a very different situation. Nonetheless, I think there are a lot of nuances here because a large portion of the BNP, maybe 50% or more, they really are pro-Jamaat. And all the arrangements for the return, etc., of BNP are really being made by the pro-Jamaat faction of the BNP. So one can see here that there might be a certain synergy between what Tarique Rahman is saying and doing and what the Jamaat-e-Islami would want. The more liberal, the pro-1971 Liberation War faction of the BNP, led by Mirza Fakhrul, seems to have been really sidelined. Even as General Secretary, Mirza Fakhrul is not being associated at all with the return of Tarique Rahman. And we will see how this works out and whether in this short period of 6 weeks, whether Tarique Rahman can adjust himself into contesting the elections. We know that the candidates for the BNP have been announced some time back. We know that one or two candidates for the BNP have actually already withdrawn because of the tense, uncertain situation. So it is early days, but let us see how it works out.
Do you think this sort of last-minute entry of Tarique Rahman just ahead of the elections also shows some kind of confidence that he may have, or could it also indicate that he was probably already in touch with possibly members of the Jamaat that are ruling the roost as of now?
Well, there is a lot of talk on this because in June 2025, as you yourself said, Mohammed Yunus had gone to London and he did have a very long meeting with Tarique Rahman. And over the last 6 months, what has been talked about in Bangladesh more and more often is that some kind of a deal was struck there. That Mohammed Yunus would be president of Bangladesh and Tarique Rahman would be prime minister and the deputy prime minister would be the head of the Jamaat-e-Islami. That was the talk at that time for a long time after Mohammed Yunus' return. Now, whether that still holds good or not is difficult to say because the Jamaat-e-Islami has certainly strengthened its own position in these intervening months. But then the Jamaat-e-Islami is also having difficulty finalizing its own candidates with all the other Islamist parties. So all these are, pre-election workouts that are to some extent inevitable. But in my view, the biggest thing is that the election should be fully participatory and the Awami League should not be banned. And I think Government of India has made very strong and very correct demarches to this account. And we've said again and again that unless the elections are participatory, they will not be credible. Unless the Awami League, the Jatiya Party and others are allowed to participate, the elections will not be credible. And so the unrest and the violence and the instability will continue. This has happened in the past in Bangladesh in 1996 when after Begum Khaleda Zia's first term, elections were held where they were considered to be completely unfair. There was a movement and the elections had to be reheld, and that's when the caretaker government system came into being. So I think that one has to watch right now what will happen. There are a lot of things up in the air right now, but I really think that the Mohammed Yunus government should decide to allow the Awami League to take part. Actually, they have just banned the activities of the Awami League. So according to what Mohammed Yunus himself said when he was in New York in September this year, he said that no, we haven't banned the Awami League, we just banned the activities, and that the Election Commission could decide whether Awami League should participate. So I think that would really be the best to bring stability to Bangladesh, and I think that American congressmen have already written to Mohammed Yunus saying that they would like that the election should be representative, that all political parties should be allowed to participate. Of course, Mohammed Yunus's office says they haven't yet received the letter as of yesterday. That's what they were saying. So I don't know is that what it means really. But I think that from all counts, I would say that as Government of India has been saying many times that Awami League should be allowed to participate, and the elections will be free and fair and participatory, so they'll be credible. And any government that this process throws up, will be welcome to take charge and decide what the future of Bangladesh should be.
Finally, Ambassador Sikri, one last question on the Bangladesh discussion. What impact do you think the killing of Osman Hadi is going to have on the Nationalist Citizens Party? Do you think there is a possibility of it getting some sympathy votes and enough to counter the others which may be more favorable as of now?
Well, the shooting and then subsequent death of Osman Hadi, he's actually the head of the Inqilab Monch. It was a party which was a small group, highly anti-Indian. And the Yunus regime immediately decided to blame India and called in a high commissioner and said, we believe that the shooter has gone to India, etc. Of course, Government of India refuted it very strongly, and we also called in the Bangladesh High Commissioner. And as of day before yesterday, the Yunus regime actually reversed their own position and said that there is no clear evidence that the shooter has gone to India, and in fact, they don't know who the shooter is. So that was, the Yunus regime had to eat humble pie on that one. I think they owe the Government of India an apology, but what has happened with the Inqilab Manch is that Usman Hadi's brother is now accusing the Yunus regime of being responsible for the killing, and he even called upon Mohammed Yunus to resign. So, it has created a lot of commotion within what should be, a very well-established Islamist coalition, because by this time, Jamaat Islami has been working on this for 15 months, and one would have expected that everything had been sorted out. But I think that this is a problem, and I think that it perhaps also could reflect on Mohammed Yunus's own stability in his position as a chief advisor. It has caused a lot of confusion. We have to see whether it settles down or there will be more such calls. But I really think, once again, that if they would just allow all the political parties to participate, everybody will find their own space, and there will be dynamic campaigning, and the elections can be free. If the elections are free, fair, inclusive, and participatory, they will then be credible, and Bangladesh will have again returned to the path of stability, democracy, and surely development.
All right, sure. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sikri, but do continue to stay on with us as we move ahead. Your supporters of Honduras and National Party celebrated after the National Electoral Council announced Nasri Afsura as the country's president-elect. Scenes from the capital showed party supporters rejoicing following the results. Addressing supporters, National Party spokesperson Maria Antonieta Mejia stressed unity within the party and called for reconciliation across the country. Meanwhile, Liberal Party candidate Salvador Nasrallah rejected the results during a press conference. Nasrallah said he would not accept the outcome, describing the electoral process as flawed. However, he urged his supporters to avoid confrontation and remain calm. The Electoral Authority said Asfura won 40.3% of the vote, narrowly defeating Nasrallah, who secured 39.5%. The vote count faced delays and system problems, with around 15% of tally sheets counted by hand to determine the final result. I now would request Ambassador Sikri to join me back in the discussion here. Ambassador Sikri, do you think Nasrallah really has a reason for concern here? We all know that the vote margin by which Afsura has won is very less, but still there has been counting by hand also.
Yes, it is a very uncertain situation, because the counting procedure itself and the way in which the ballot boxes and all that were done, it has led to a lot of comments there. But you're right that the declaration after the hand counting is 40.3% in favor of the winning candidate, and very close 39.4 or 5% in favor of the other candidate. Now, I think there will be some kind of a challenge, but whether it will be a serious challenge or whether it can be sorted out, and whether it can be, effectively shown that indeed the hand counting was very accurate and correct, and that the victory is a correct one, I think things should settle down. But I mean, it is, interesting that the candidate favored by President Trump has won the elections. Similarly, in Chile and Bolivia, you had the right-wing candidates winning, but you have real problem right now with Venezuela and President Trump's position on Venezuela. So Latin America has certainly been seeing its share of uncertainty, its share of changes, and I hope that it will not cause a lot of difficulty for any of the countries. But in Honduras itself, I do think things will settle down very quickly in favor of the winning candidate.
All right, sure. I would have loved to have more discussion with you on that, but unfortunately, that's all the time that I have. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sikri. And moving ahead, viewers, Ukrainian President Zelensky has shared a Christmas message acknowledging the challenges his country faces amid the ongoing Russia war. In his address, Zelensky says that the Ukrainians are celebrating Christmas in difficult circumstances, with many still displaced or separated from loved ones. He also condemned Russia's recent attacks, including drones and ballistic missiles, calling them acts of godless aggression. The Ukrainian president also prayed for peace and the safe return of those on the front lines and in captivity. Let's listen in to what the Ukrainian president had to say.
Ми відзначаємо Різдво у важкий час. На жаль, не всі з нас в цей вечір вдома, і не в усіх, на жаль, є дім. І не всі, на жаль, сьогодні з нами. Та попри всі біди, які принесла Росія, вона не здатна окупувати чи розбомбити найголовніше – це наше українське серце. Це наша віра один в одного, і це наша єдність. І ми щасливі, коли чуємо музику Різдва, але ще більше, коли не чуємо музику зла. Не чуємо пролітаючих над головою дронів і ракет. Напередодні Різдва русські вкотре показали, хто вони насправді. Масовані обстріли, сотні шахедів, балістика, кинджали – все було. Так б'ють безбожники, так роблять ті, хто не має абсолютно нічого спільного з християнством і будь-чим людським. Але ми тримаємось, ми підтримуємо один одного, і ми молимося сьогодні за всіх, хто на фронті, щоб повернулися живими, за всіх, хто в полоні, щоб повернулися додому. Сьогодні мрія у всіх нас одна, і бажання ми загадуємо одне на всіх. Щоб він сконав, скаже кожен про себе. Але коли звертаємось до Бога, звісно, ми просимо ширше, просимо про мир для України. Ми боремось за це і молимось за це.
That's all we have time for. Do keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.